Hey guys, Aaron Cybertron Zeng here, and today I'm back with another episode of Road to Ranked, where I climb the online VGC 16 ladder and provide live commentary as I go. I think that this will be the final episode with the team that I used to win Anaheim Regionals with. We'll be switching to something new in the next episode, so stay tuned. Also, if you have not seen the match analysis that I did of the semifinals of regionals, definitely check it out. I'll link it in the description below. Trying to do some other content right now. School's still been pretty busy, and the upload schedule is a little bit out of whack since I'm actually going to Japan over spring break starting next weekend, or yeah, this upcoming weekend. So I'm going to try to pre-record some content, and hopefully once I come back things will settle down a little bit. But as always, thank you guys for continuing to support my videos and my channel. So let's jump into this episode. Still just under the 1800s. As always, if you enjoy Road to Rank, please share your support by leaving a like on the video. Would really appreciate it. And otherwise, yeah, I mean, I've been working on a bunch of other things that I've already like finished slideshows for, and I'm just currently recording right now. One is an analysis of the regionals metagame, so I think that'll be pretty exciting, and that should be going up before I leave for my vacation. But we're gonna start off today's episode with a Big Six team: Salmon, Smeargle, Kangaskhan, Talonflame, Groudon, and Xerneas. So not much to say about this matchup. You guys have seen it a bunch with this team already, and I'm gonna go with the typical Salmon Smeargle lead with Bronzong and Kyogre in the back. In best of one against the Big Six team, this is by far the safest combination. It's nice to have Groudon, I think, on my side here, if, say, I were doing a best of three, because Groudon's really nice against Big Six teams. I mean, you can just Precipice Blade spam, especially with Gravity, really 2 KOs everything on that kind of team. But in best of one setting, you know, you want to play as safely as possible. The Salmon Smeargle lead always just puts on pressure immediately with Intimidate, and then you can just bring in Bronzong, and then Kyogre's Water Spouts kind of sweep through the game. So you have to play a little bit carefully, but typically this is like a 90-10 matchup, and the only possibility for this Big Six team to win is if they, for example, like lead Xerneas and Xerneas, or I should say Smeargle, gets a lot of good moody boosts, or it has a combination of Follow Me, Crafty Shield, like Fake Out, etc. So obviously no game in Pokemon is 100% winnable, especially when RNG is a factor, and your opponents can always have tricks up their sleeves, so you should be careful. You know, when we saw this kind of team dominate Virginia regionals, it was very standard movesets, but you know, we saw Marcus Yoshi use something on his own channel, which I'll also link in the description below if you don't check him out currently, and in that he basically kind of changed everything up. He had like Dark Voidless Smeargle, which was pretty interesting, and instead like fully support. But pretty ideal lead matchup here, as my opponent leads with Kangaskhan and Talonflame, so you get the Intimidate off immediately, which is always good. So this first turn I have a bunch of options. If Kangaskhan has Power Up Punch, he could actually Power Up Punch his own Talonflame and Tailwind, which I think would be really interesting. So the question is, do I want to just like go for the Dark Void, because it's, you know, the Smeargle switching out or protecting is so obvious. I think I'm actually literally just gonna Hyper Voice and Dark Void. Oh, that's not Dark Void. Reason being here, like, if Kangaskhan Fake Out Salamence trying to, you know, prevent an attack, then it's just gonna get hit by Dark Void, unless he's got Taunt and Talonflame, but then I don't lose very much. And if he goes for the Fake Out or the Double Edge onto Smeargle, then Salamence gets a free Hyper Voice off. Both of his Pokemon are intimidated. I get the free switching into Bronzong, and then the following turn I can just Hyper Voice Trick Room. So kind of thinking long term right now. No switch outs from my opponent either, which is pretty good. And if Kangaskhan on Talonflame are the leads, it's most likely that my opponent has Kyogre, or I should say Groudon and Xerneas in the back. And if that's the case, then, you know, he's going to be in for a tough time. So, gonna see the Mega Evolutions come out on both sides here. Let's see whether Kangaskhan does go for the Fake Out. I would really laugh if he went for the Power Up Punch onto himself, but no, unfortunately it is gonna be the Fake Out, but it is gonna target down Salamence. So does Smeargle get the Dark Void off, or does Talonflame go for a Taunt? Nope, it actually goes for a Tailwind. So that's exactly why I didn't protect with the Smeargle. Let's see if I can get the Dark Void off. Who do I connect with here? Smeargle's Dark Void is gonna be able to hit at least one of the 2 Pokemon. Does it manage to connect with both? Let's see. Is going to be able to pick up the sleep onto both Pokemon. So, you know, that's why Smeargle is such a threatening Pokemon, because if you mispredict and make the wrong call, you can actually just shut your opponent down instantly. So that allows me to just go for a Hyper Voice. The question here is, do I want to switch out into something like Bronzong, or do I want to just stay in with Smeargle? I think the answer here is to switch out into Bronzong. Reason being, now I'll even put on more offensive pressure with Gyro Ball / Trick Room. So, you know, I would have been fine hitting at least one of the Dark Voids there, even if I missed both. I mean, it would have been at the end of the world, but yeah, I was able to punish my opponent for making a relatively risky play. He's just going to burn a turn of sleep, which is, you know, the good thing. Like, you can, with Tailwind, now my opponent has a chance of waking up with both Pokemon the following turn, but Hyper Voice there does a pretty comfortable amount. So here, I know that -1 Flare Blitz shouldn't even knock out Bronzong, so I'm actually just going to Hyper Voice and Trick Room here. Even if he wakes up with both Pokemon, that's perfectly fine, but unfortunately for him, Talonflame is going to stay asleep. But Kangaskhan here does manage to wake up, is going to get the Double Edge off. That actually might help me more than it hurts me, because Kangaskhan's going to be taking recoil damage. Even with the critical hit there, fortunately Salamence hangs on with 4 HP, so that recoil might actually put him in Hyper Voice knockout range. Let's see. Hyper Voice comes out, looks like it's going to knock out Talonflame, and barely missed the knockout on the Kangaskhan, but now I am able to successfully set up Trick Room, and I still have all 4 of my Pokemon. Granted, Salamence is pretty low right now, but I am really happy about the position so far. Couldn't have played out any better other than Kangaskhan also staying asleep, but can't really complain about that. Was fortunate to connect with the Dark Void, so yeah, I mean, this matchup you definitely don't need Dark Void to win, but you can just punish your opponent so heavily if they rely on it. The Groudon's coming in here for my opponent, but I'm more than okay with that, because what I'm going to do this next turn is I'm just going to switch out into Kyogre and Skill Swap. And then once Kyogre gets the Levitate up, my opponent has no way to touch my Kyogre with Groudon. Kangaskhan, of course, can still Double Edge, but it'll knock itself out from the recoil, so I'm fine with that. And getting the Kyogre here in safely is really important, and I'm just going to go for the Skill Swap here onto my Kyogre to give it Levitate. Of course, I could just stay in and attack here, but I would rather not. I would rather just get Kyogre in and try to finish the game up with that. The question here is, what does Kangaskhan go for? You might actually be inclined to go for a Sucker Punch on the Salamence, though I guess the Kyogre switching is relatively obvious, so maybe my opponent will predict that. We'll see. But otherwise, still pretty good position. However, I do have to be a little bit careful because the Smeargle obviously doesn't really get any offensive pressure on, so I really want to rely on my Kyogre and my Bronzong, both which are really good options. Bronzong here can presumably just knock out Kangaskhan and the Xerneas, which my opponent should have in the back, and Kyogre, obviously, with the water type attacks, can just one-hit KO the Groudon. So this turn's pretty important for my opponent. If my opponent, you know, doesn't predict the Kyogre switch in here, then I think the game is outright over. Even if he does go for a Double Edge, I'm still fine with that. Let's see. Yep, we do see the Sucker Punch come out, though. That is going to fail, so I'm going to be able to just swap the Levitate onto Kyogre, and now Groudon has 0 ways to touch my Kyogre. So it's basically saying, hey, if you don't switch out, then my Kyogre is just going to wall you, but if you do switch out, then that's a free turn of Water Spouting for me. So pretty good there, and we see the Eruption come out from my opponent, too. Unfortunately, that is not going to help out whatsoever. That's going to allow me to just go for a Water Spout. Now the question is, who do I Gyro Ball here? Who do I want to predict the switch out? It's highly likely that I don't even have to worry about the prediction game here, but if I were my opponent, I would probably switch out Groudon, so I'm just going to Water Spout there. But I think, like I said, my opponent needed to make a prediction that last turn to win the game. It's actually going to be Kangaskhan switching out, but Groudon either is going to faint. Oh, it's actually Smeargle as the last one. That changes things up a little bit. And Groudon does go for the Protect. Okay, well, that makes this game a little bit more interesting. However, you know, with Trick Room still being up, yeah, I definitely thought Xerneas would be my opponent's last one. Didn't consider Smeargle as an option, so that's pretty interesting to see. Looks like it is going to be Sashed here. Okay. What does it get as a Moody Boost? Gets Evasiveness. That's the one thing that my opponent... and a Speed Decrease. Get out of town. He still can't touch me with Groudon, though, so I'm not too worried. I'm just going to Water Spout here and Gyro Ball the Smeargle again. But, my opponent literally got the ideal situation there. I mean, maybe I should have just Gyro Balled the Kangaskhan slot then, but, and the reason why that makes a little bit more sense is because you get a guaranteed knockout, because Kangaskhan reveal Fake Out, so, I mean, some Kangaskhan's very rarely carry Protect, but actually it looks like no Fake Out coming out from my opponent here, and I fortunately connect with the Gyro Ball, so, you know, the boosts there don't matter. Bronzong being so naturally slow there, and Smeargle's on that kind of team typically running max speed, but that was definitely pretty interesting, especially if my opponent had the Fake Out there. For example, if you Fake Out Kyogre and I miss the Gyro Ball, then you can maybe Precipice Blades, knock out the Bronzong, but then you still can't really knock out Kyogre, so I don't think there was much my opponent really could have done. Kangaskhan's going to come back in, but at so low health, you should be able to pick up a pretty dominating win here. But yeah, that's why, you know, Kangaskhan Talonflame, not exactly the best lead-up matchup against this team, especially not when you get a Dark Void off for turn 1. So that kind of decided the course of this match, I would say. I think my opponent had very little chance to win after getting that Dark Void off, and that's because my opponent didn't play safely and didn't try to punish me there. And I knew that even if I lost Smeargle there, either to a Fake Out or to a Double Edge, then I would get a lot of damage off with Hyper Voice, and I would set myself up with the Bronzong in the back. And Bronzong Kyogre is the real crux of beating those Big Six kind of teams. So pretty nice win there, and we are going to be down to our very final match match with this team. As I mentioned, I unfortunately won't be doing a team analysis with this team in particular because it's, some of the EV spreads I don't want to give out because this is built by my good friend Alex Gomez in Spain, who I think is actually the CP leader over in Spain right now. So obviously a very great player, and want to respect his wishes. So this time my opponent rocking a team of Kangaskhan, Salamence, Xerneas, Togekiss, Groudon, and Liepard. So kind of similar to the Big 6 team that we just went up against, but this one a little bit different since we've seen Togekiss and Liepard, both which are pretty interesting options here. Definitely want to reconsider my strategy. Like, I normally go with Salamence, Smeargle here. Smeargle might actually not be the best Pokemon in this matchup, although, it was instrumental towards winning the last one. Mainly because Smeargle here can get taunted, and it can get, flinched by the Togekiss. Kangaskhan can just double edge into it. So definitely a little bit trickier here. I think Salamence is also, or the decision between Salamence and Mawile is also an interesting one here. Definitely looking forward to this match, though. So let's see. I'm gonna go with Bronzong. I still want to lead Bronzong Salamence, I feel like. Get the Intimidate off. Threaten Trick Room immediately. Although Mawile is so tempting here, if I can avoid the Groudon, Mawile's excellent. But we might see Groudon come out as a lead, actually. So the question is, do I want to bring Mawile instead? Maybe I do. But if we see something like Kangaskhan, Groudon, yeah, I don't know. The Groudon's just too threatening for me. And I think Kyogre and Groudon, I can use both of those enough to sweep through my opponent's team. And I don't know, Mawile here, I think definitely could be the right call, but I'm not going to go for it because of the fact that my opponent's Groudon can just spam Precipice Blades if that's the case, and if my opponent leads Kangaskhan, Groudon into Bronzong, Mawile, then it's going to be a terrible position for me. So trying to avoid that matchup. Highly likely we don't see it, but in the off chance we do, you never want to lead with something that your opponent can just 100% shut down. Looks like it's actually going to be Liepard and Xerneas, so Mawile would have been a pretty excellent Pokemon to bring in here, but I'm okay with this. He's probably going to go for the Fake Out onto the Bronzong, maybe just Geomancy immediately. I'm really surprised my opponent let this, given that I had 2 Steel types. The question is, do you go for the Dazzling Gleam, or do you Geomancy? Regardless, I think the answer is to switch into Groudon. No, that's not necessarily the case. Maybe I want a Double Edge here, to put it in Precipice Blaze KO range, and just Trick Room here. Maybe even Gyro Ball. What do you do here? I could also Hyper Voice, but that's not going to put it in P-Blade's KO range, so I'll Double Edge. And I will Gyro Ball the... Xerneas is a bigger threat, so I'll double up onto Xerneas. So let's see how this plays out. Yeah, Mawile Bronzong ended up would have been a solid lead here. Was anticipating Groudon coming out immediately. Do see a Fake Out, no Protect coming out, going to target down Bronzong. Not much surprise there. But Mence is going to be able to get a Double Edge off here. Now the question is, does Xerneas Geomancy? Does he Dazzling Gleam? He does go for the Geomancy still. Okay, that's an interesting decision. Alright, now we have some mind games, because the question is, what do you do with... Liepard, so you could Foul Play and Dazzling Gleam / Moonblast, but I don't think my opponent actually knocks me out if he goes for the Dazzling Gleam and Foul Play combination. So, I could predict that and just go for the Double Edge into Xerneas and the Trick Room. Though if he has Taunt, that would also be interesting. So I could also protect my Salamence and Gyro Ball, but he could protect Xerneas right now. Oh, tricky, tricky, tricky. I'm inclined to switch out into Groudon here, actually. Do I Gyro Ball? Do I Trick Room? I'm gonna go for the Gyro Ball here. Because if I knock it out, then Salamence just has speed control again. And if he taunts me and I switch out, then I lose a lot of momentum here. Then again, maybe that's not good for the long-term game plan. So here's Groudon coming out. Does Liepard go for the taunt? Does he fear that I have Mentor? Most Bronzongs carry Lumberry, so my opponent probably isn't expecting that. Yeah, he just goes for the Dazzling Gleam here, indicating that Liepard's going to go for the foul play, which shouldn't knock me out. It might actually. It's going to be close. Yeah, hang on. So I could have Trick Room there, but decided not to. That might hurt me in the long run. Let's see. However, I do knock out the Xerneas, and I am still up 4-3, but now my opponent can switch into Groudon freely, which is a concern. Especially because my Groudon took damage, so is in, could be knocked out by a Precipice Blades. But that's actually going to be Kangaskhan coming in here. That's interesting. So obviously I don't want to protect with Groudon. I mean, here you just go for, like... Yeah, I'm still going to go for the protect play here. Forcing him to Encore me the following turns. And I'll go for the Hail Mary Trick Room. I don't anticipate I'll get it off. But in the chance that I do, that would be great. Yeah, so maybe I should have just gone for Trick Room last turn. I was too scared of the taunt coming out. I mean, if he did taunt me and got the Dazzling Gleam off, then the next turn he could just Dazzling Gleam Foul Play Bronzong, and that would pick up a knockout on anything in that slot. So I decided it was worth the risk, but yeah, Liepard, you don't even know if it carries taunt because it likes to go with like Fake Out, Foul Play, Encore, and then a fourth move. Sometimes Thunder Wave, Swagger, Taunt, etc. So I'm still going to protect with Groudon here because I don't want to take extra damage right now, and I want him to force the Encore. He does go for the Fake Out here into Groudon. There's the Foul Play coming out, and smartly enough, going to target down the Bronzong. So, like I said, went for the Hail Mary there in case he faked out and Foul Played the Groudon for whatever reason. But I do get the free switch into my Salamence now, which is nice. So, this is actually kind of interesting because I have Tailwind. So I could actually switch Groudon out into Kyogre and Tailwind, predicting him to try to Encore my Groudon and Double Edge Mence. I think I'm actually going to go for that setup here. If Kangaskhan were intimidated, I'd feel a little bit better, but if I were my opponent, I'd make the safe play of just going for the Encore into Groudon and the Double Edge onto Mence. So I guess Groudon switching out is obvious here, so you could predict that and just go for all offense here with the Double Edge and a Foul Play, even into that slot. But the main idea here is I should be able to get Tailwind up, and then I'll have two attackers. Though, I guess if you double up into the Groudon slot, you can knock Kyogre out, and then you can just Encore Salamence, which would also be pretty bad. So let's see, it's going to come down to the wire here. So this turn, I think, is going to be the most important turn in deciding who wins this match. So Kyogre coming in. What does he go for? Does he go for an Encore? Does he try to knock out my Salamence? Like, if he went for the Double Edge onto Mence, that's the most important thing. I don't really care what Liepard does here. I guess you could taunt me too, or Thunder Wave. Oh, all of those would be pretty interesting. Yeah, he does go for the Encore. Okay, excellent. So I get the Tailwind up. However, the issue with this is now Sun is going to be up, so Kyogre can't Water Spout, which is kind of a big issue. He does go for the Double Edge here. Does he target Kyogre? Nope, going to target down Mence. Can I survive? Oh, that's huge. I do manage to survive there, which is great. Okay, so this is big. Now I've got Tailwind up. He's still got Groudon in the back, though, which is interesting. For example, you can switch into Groudon right now. And, could still go for Water Spell and switch out into my own Groudon. Or I could Ice Beam, so putting it in Precipice KO range. I think Ice Beam might be the better play here. But Water Spout would just punish him so hard if he stayed in. I think here you'd probably Sucker Punch Salamence and switch out into Groudon. So I'm going to Ice Beam Liepard, predicting that. And I'll switch out into my own Groudon. Okay, Mence switches. I don't know, maybe that was too risky. Maybe I should have just gone in with the Water Spout. Do we see a Groudon switch in from my opponent? Show me the Groudon switch in. Liepard into Groudon. Come on. Oh, the Kangaskhan goes out into Groudon. Okay, I'm okay with that. Wow, no Groudon? My opponent didn't even bring in Groudon, huh? Ice Beam there does so much damage too, wow. Well, that makes this match even more interesting. Because I can just Rock Slide Ice Beam here. And that's exactly what I'm going to go for. Yeah. No switch outs either, so I do just get my attacks off here. Okay. no Citrus Berry either. Wow. This is not how I was expecting the game to finish up, but I just picked up the double knockout there. Huh. Very interesting. Very interesting. Yeah, I don't really know why my opponent decided Groudon wasn't worth bringing. I mean, Mawile actually would have just completely ran through my opponent's team, but somehow we are able to pull out the win here because of the clutch Tailwind on Salamence. So here, I'm just going to go for the... Well, just Ice Beam and Fire Punch here. Not much my opponent can do, given that it's 3-1. Yep, he's just going to pull the forfeit, and we're going to be able to win the second game as well. But that was a really interesting match there, because my opponent decided, I'm not going to bring anything to check Mawile. Maybe my opponent's not even going to bring it, but because there wasn't a Groudon on my opponent's end, and mainly it was the Tailwind there. I'm sure my opponent wasn't expecting that. That's why it's such a great move on Salamence, but you can see that this team isn't just Trick Room, and Tailwind there was able to clutch the win out and seal it up for us. So, pretty exciting match there for sure. Definitely didn't expect it to end that way. Togekiss and Liepard really had no offense. Unfortunately enough, not getting Encored was huge, and Salamence hanging out with 4 HP was also pretty big. So, managed to pick up 2 wins with this team for our last episode with it. And we're going to be moving on to something new pretty soon. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this one. Leave a like always if you did, and I'll see you guys next time. Alright, peace.